Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Cline, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Success Podcast. Today, I am joined by Dylan Scroggins with the Kalmar Group. And Dylan, I'm really excited to welcome you to the show today.
Yeah, Tony, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and talk about some things that are really I'm passionate about, which is building the right team for the business. But before we do that, let's get back to talking about how you and I met each other not that long ago.
Yeah. So before broker owner, a mutual friend of ours, Mark Brower, said, you got to meet Tony. Combination of running, property management, recruiting, leader development, everything. He's like, you got to meet Tony. And we were in the coffee line, and I think you were talking to a friend, so I might have rudely interrupted you. But I think I just tapped you on the shoulder and said, Tony, how are you? And started talking from there. So I'm glad Mark gave me the heads up, and it was great to meet you in person.
Yeah, and we've had conversations since, and it's been great getting to know you a little bit better. Okay, so let's kind of dive into because I want to start getting right into providing some value for the listeners and the audience right away. You have a pretty extensive background in property management and helping people build teams in property management. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into the business and what you're doing in the business to help property management companies.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for asking. So really been recruiting for about 15 years. It was my first job out of school right during the global financial crisis. A great time to graduate, right? Highly don't suggest graduating at that time. And my first job was in college admissions, which was basically recruiting. So I've laid a really good foundation there. Then did a variety of other things, but about 10 years ago, I was working for a recruitment agency, and one of our first clients was gkhouses.com. Had about 40 people, and that was my first time recruiting in property management. It was sharing their story, really talking about not just where they're at, but where they were going. So I stepped out of recruiting for a few years and came back to it with my own firm, Kalmar Group. And one of the first phone calls I made was back to them. Well, gkhouses.com, for those who don't know, became Evernest, and 40 people became 400. Matthew, their CEO founder, was a great, mentor, friend, resource for me, even when I was thinking about getting back into recruiting. So from there, I met Peter Lohman, did a few searches for him, and it's really just been a snowball effect from there. And it's been fun space. I like property management. It's very operational centric, but what I like about it best is that there's a lot of opportunity there, and I feel like property managers sometimes don't give themselves enough credit for the opportunities that they have. Property management is a very gritty industry, right? It's a lot of spinning plates. It's a lot of hiring for different styles of roles. But overall, it's a really good opportunity. And there's a lot of people, whether they're in property management or not, they can have a great career as a W-2. And I think it's just taking the time to tell that story is something that I'm always reminding property management owners really the past couple of years is this is a great opportunity. Like, you need to share it more and really shed that imposter syndrome that someone would not want to work in this industry because there's a lot of exciting things happening.
One of the things that you mentioned, and I lean heavy into this, and our listeners will know I talk a lot about the championship formula, and one of those that we start with is what I'll call the game plan, which is really putting together the core values, the company mission, the company vision of where the company is going, then building out your target client profile, and then income and revenue streams. Those are kind of what make up that first component. But I see a lot of property management entrepreneurs, they get stuck in, I'm just getting through the day. I'm just trying to I have more on my plate than what I can knock off. And that's a perfect person that needs to recruit somebody, but yet they're so busy doing this stuff in the day-to-day that they don't set aside the time to get really clear on where is the company going? What is the vision that I can sell to somebody? And I don't mean like selling them an empty bag, but I'm selling them on where we're going. I'm getting them excited and pumped up about joining the team and contributing to the team. And when you mentioned that, I think that's a piece that a lot of property managers miss. How do you go about coaching somebody or telling somebody to create that in order to recruit those top talent people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And a lot of the things that I'm going to be sharing are things that you do not need a recruiter for. People have been hiring without recruiters for millennium. So hopefully a lot of these, tactics and, toolkits can be used. Well, first off, you said something interesting. You used the word recruit. Some people just use the word hire. So I think that's the first step is from a mentality perspective, separating hiring versus recruiting. Yes, recruiting is a part of the hiring process, but they got to be separate. Because if you think of recruiting as a separate entity, I think it adds a sort of I guess, focus towards it and intentionality around it in the same way of, if you're looking at your books and, accounting, finance, like there's different elements around these words and separating those semantics like really helps with the focus. So, part of what you do is helping people really get their house in order, right? And laying that foundation. I think that same mentality needs to be applied to recruiting. So it's great to have an interview process, interview questions, all that laid out. But if you don't have a plan to actually recruit, whether it be like what platforms are you going to use, what message you're going to use, obviously, like you mentioned earlier, like getting that story really tight. But the main thing, just to kind of circle back and answer your question, is really nailing down the candidate profile. And what do I mean by that? Is that really nailing down, well, the golden question, do they have to have property management experience? If property management experience, are you okay with multifamily or you only want single family? What's your compensation? Is that compensation market rate? And really, really digging deep and maybe using your peers or an outside source to really, really nail down that narrative and the numbers. I think that's what helps a lot. And a lot of times people don't take the time to really drill down to ask, hey, do I really need this role? And then secondly, now that I need this role, what type of person and background do I really need? And then now I have a plan to go get them, and then it's executing the plan. If you just go out and blast on Indeed or LinkedIn and you haven't done those first three things, one, it's not going to be as effective. And lastly, there's no really why behind it, right? So I think like most things, just going farther and farther upstream can be the best step in order to get the results downstream.
I love that. I do a lot of my coaching through sports analogy just because it's easier to tell stories
Yeah.
when you attach it to something, and people learn more through story than they do just facts and figures. And so as you're telling me this, I'm thinking about if I am building a championship team, I don't just show up on draft day and pick from what's available. I'm actually out there upstream, like
Mm-hmm.
you said. I'm out there looking for those championship players that I can attract and bring to my team. Even if I've already got somebody that's really good in a position, I'm actively looking at what else is available in the marketplace. Not
Yep.
necessarily just because I want to replace who I have, because of who I have might be doing really well, but what else is available in the market that could add to my team, either additionally, or is there anything that I see that other people are doing that we could bring those traits in and start training on those traits as well?
Yeah, that's great. And this is not a pipe dream. Like people are doing this. I had a conversation yesterday with the group. Actually met through Peter, and they were talking to me about their we call it ABC, always be recruiting. They were talking about their bench, and I was super impressed. And I told them, I said, look, like you're doing something that 95% of people are not doing around all small business, not just property management. And we were just once again just talking shop, and it was really encouraging to hear that of them building that bench of people and getting in contact with roles and people that they were interested and attracted to, but just not might not have a position right now. I think that's critical. And I know we've only been talking for 10 minutes, but I am based here in Birmingham, Alabama. So here's the token Nick Saban reference. But when Nick Saban was recruited to come to Bama from Miami, so he was on the plane with the president of Bama, and he looked at Mal Moore, the current AD, and he said, "Do you think you got the best coach in college football?" And Mal Moore said, "I hope I did." And Nick Saban said, "Well, I'm not that good of a coach, but I'm a hell of a recruiter." And if you look at the story of Bama, it all came through recruiting. Yes, Nick Saban was a great coach, all the things. I'm sure I'm not really, don't know a lot of football tactical stuff, but the way he was able to build what he built was all through recruiting, right? And one of the unique things he did is that, yes, he presented a vision of where they're going, but he also always presented a challenge, right? So you're going to come in and you might not get the number you want. You might not be the number one on the depth chart, but you're going to have an opportunity. And I think that's another thing in recruiting, getting that narrative tight. People want a challenge. If you just go out talking about comp, you're going to get people who only look for comp. Look at college football right now. You got a lot of guys that just want the money and they typically don't do well in the field. But when you go out there with a challenge of saying, hey, look, here's the thing. We're at 300 doors right now. We just implemented a whole new software, just did a full audit of our financial systems. I've just got a coach. His name's Tony Cline. We're locked and ready to go. We want to get to 1,000 doors by the end of 2027. We're going to go. We're going to get there. We'd love for you to be a part of it, but if you're not going to be a part of it, we're going to find someone else who will be. And you start sharing those stories, that's how you get that director of marketing to leave software and come join a PM group. That's how you get that director of operations to leave a commercial construction company or a landscaping company or home services company to join your team. Like, people want a vision, yes, but they also want a challenge. I think they also kind of want to know that you're going to do it with or without them, but they also want an opportunity to be a part of that. And I think that's, once again, if I could, and it's not a criticism, it's really a challenge to PM owners to really own your vision, speak with conviction, and put it out in front of them. We talked about Mark Brower. You talk to Mark Brower for 7 minutes and you want to get on a plane and join his team in Phoenix, right? It's very easy for me to recruit for guys like him because they have a story, a vision, but they also have like a mountain that they're climbing. They're trying to get people to climb it with them. So I think, I get excited about this stuff. I talk recruiting all day, but specifically in the PM space, if you just say, hey, we're a PM group, we need this role, we'll pay you this amount, it's $5K over market rate, you're not going to get the people you want. You want to come in there with conviction, volume of reach, right? And also a really compelling challenge and vision for the right people.
Well, I think people long to be a part of something great. They all want to say, I am a part of something, even if they don't know what that is now. If they see that opportunity that I could contribute to this, I could be a part of this, and I could be a part of the journey, I could be a part of the solution, the team, the victory. I think that that's missing in society these days, where people just sit at home on their couch with the TV on while they're looking at their phone, not really paying attention to either, not really contributing, and they're looking for a way to have meaning in life. And maybe this is getting too deep, but I feel like if as a business, if you can provide that, if you can provide meaning for that challenge that you mentioned, this is what we're trying to accomplish and we are going to do it. We'd love to have you be a part of the team, but if you're not, we'll find somebody else that will. Having that type of drive, determination, and grit to achieve what you want to achieve, I think attracts those people and creates a spark inside them that makes them want to, like you said, leave where they're at to join something where people are passionate about creating and being.
Yeah, no, I think that's, and just to double down on that, think of the industry of property management. Yes, it's a headache sometimes. Yes, there's tenants and one-star reviews. Yes, I did not build a property management portfolio myself. I got, friends and colleagues that have. But if you like really get in the guts and take out the property management word, what is the industry? It's literally providing a home to one party. It's providing potentially life-changing wealth to another party. Those are two really good things. Like, those
Yep.
are a really big deal. It's providing a place for someone to live, and then also a place for people to invest. And I think, once again, not a criticism at all, but more of an encouragement to the market that it is that those are two very dignified things. And I sometimes wish the property management industry would give itself more credit for the good work it's doing, and not just focus on like the broken fridges and the tenant lawsuits.
Yeah. All right. I want to make sure that we're not talking over. This isn't phrased right. Talking over people's heads or talking above where they're at in their business right now,
Mm.
because statistically, and this may be different with the sample that you have that you work with, because people that are growing need more people. But statistically, in property management, there are way more property management companies under 150 to 300 doors than there are at 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever Everness at. I think they're over 20,000 now. And so there are way more people that are just trying to figure out, how do I get my first person, or how do I get my second person? Let's start there and talk a little bit through, what do I need to do to get ready to hire that first person?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's also, I think every CEO, founder, owner, whatever industry, but specifically in property management, they typically have their core skill set. Take Peter Lohman, engineering background, very operations. Take Mark Brower, very sales, marketing, right? I think leaning in to what they're good at, let's talk specifically with sub 300 doors. And if sales is what they're naturally get energized by and enjoy, then keep doing sales. But as fast as possible, try to find something in an operations role, right? Don't worry about pods. Don't worry about long term. Just find a really good leader for that property manager role. And I know that seems very elementary, but I think having the freedom to really lean into strengths and then kind of hiring the opposite, I think that's wise for that first one. I think around 200 to 300 doors, there eventually has to be a risk, right? And that risk is typically a BDM. And I think the BDM, if done well, we can go down that rabbit hole if we want to. Is with BDM, then it's kind of, well, we got more doors, we're doing well there. Then we got to juice up our operation. So there is always like a balance there, right? Of like, if you feel good about operations, you kind of feel like you're at bandwidth and you need some more doors, then you lean more into sales, you lean more into marketing. Like a lot of those director roles that I, professionally do a lot of work with, typically they're not needed to about 500 doors. But going back to just even the root of your question, I think first identifying what is my strength, leaning into that, and then hiring opposite. That would actually be my preference. And then, in regards to brass tacks, some of the things I talked about earlier, like getting a lot of opinions and hearing war stories of what other people have done is always helpful. And then really nailing down, once you've identified who you need, going back to that earlier about the candidate profile and really getting that in order. So, and we can talk as tactical as you want in regards to like how to find those people. But I'm not sure if I answered your question there, but I think just identifying what role offsets you well is great, especially sub 300 doors. But the reality is like, sub 300 doors, you're still going to be doing a lot yourself until you can, release with RTMs and property managers and things like that.
Okay, so now we've got the basics built. We've got myself and then somebody that's the opposite of me. We've hired for those skills. We start to build out a small team. Maybe we add a couple of remote team members or virtual assistants. And then we get to that threshold. We're at 3, 4, 500 doors where we start to see, okay, we are actually building a business. We actually need to build
Mm-hmm.
out a team. We need to get more, in the beginning, it's just a couple of people fighting the battles on all fronts. And then as we start to create better systems, we start to define our roles better. What do you suggest as people are building out their roles, their positions for the team? And then you mentioned making sure that at one point you said, do we even need that role? Do we even need that position? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm at 500 doors now. I've grown. We're seeing some success. We have the business development kind of working. And on the operations side, we need to do something, or operations is working and we need to grow our business development. Doesn't matter. You pick.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Yeah.
at this point where we need to grow and expand. How do we go about doing that in a systematic way that will produce the best results?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because you're right. Like it's a dance, right? The cash flow, operations, door count, marketing, sales. What do we need? It sometimes feels like whack-a-mole. And that's for any business, but in property management, distinctly. I mean, you can get a windfall of doors coming in, and you need something fast, but you can also have a windfall of doors going out, and you might need to adjust there. So that's what makes this challenging. Is just the 3, 6 month, 12-month horizon. So that's probably the best way to start is really just, and I talk to clients a lot about this, of just like staying in the moment. What do you need right now? Yes, I know you want to get to 1,000 doors. You're going to need something else then. But very, very brass tacks of what you can do right now. You're in that situation you mentioned, 500 doors. Let's say you're really considering, do I need this or this or this? I would say the first thing, well, one, definitely be wary of title inflation. I've seen that happen, and people get burned about it 3 years down the road. What do I mean by that? Giving someone a VP title with 2 direct reports is a really bad idea. I don't care if they threatened to leave and said, hey, like titles do matter. anyone who says titles don't matter has a title that warrants that opinion. They're typically a founder, owner, CEO, and they don't care about titles because they're the one at the top. But titles really do matter. So this trying to get brass tacks, very granular. Be very, very careful with your titles early, because what happens is if you assign too many directors too early, and I don't see a lot of people do this. I think the property manager, senior property manager, things like that are really, really helpful. But you do not need a director until that person has, let's say, 2 to 3 direct reports who are also have direct reports. So if you're managing the managers, yes, I would say director title then. But VP, don't even think about the VP title until you're at 700 to 1,000 doors. That's one of my first main discussions with clients, and just getting the title right. That has a lot of ripple effects in regards to compensation and responsibilities, etc. And there's a guy named John Seifer. I don't know him that well, so free plug for his book, Output Thinking. That is a fantastic book. It's had a big impact on me in building my own business. Is not just thinking about who you need, what outputs do you need to produce. So what I was talking about earlier, I think I need a director of marketing, but then I list out the outputs of what that director of marketing does. Well, 80% could that be dispersed amongst 3 people, add 20% to their workload, and I'll still be good, right? Or that could be covered by a virtual assistant or global talent. So I think focusing on the outputs and working backwards, just people get so obsessed of just like, hey, I need a director of sales to run my 3 BDMs. Well, out of those 3 BDMs, what if you promoted one to senior BDM and have the other 2 report to them? Like there's certain things that you can do to get creative with titles and structure. But if you focus too much on like, hate to say it, but ego and trying to have these different layers and pods and all these things while ignoring the outputs, what's going to happen is that you're going to be overpaying someone for outputs that someone else could have done or could have been divided amongst more people. So it's definitely a math. It's definitely kind of like, oh man, I wish I had a whiteboard to explain this stuff, but it's all different. It's all nuance. It's all like at the risk of anybody leaving at any time. But that would be my best advice, going to sum up everything, is focus on the outputs of the job you actually need done and not like, hey, we're really busy, we need another person. Because that can be the worst thing, right? What's that Jim Gaffigan? He had like 6 kids, and they say, what's it like having 6 kids? He's like, imagine you're drowning with 5 kids, and then someone hands you another kid. So and I think sometimes when we're building a business, it's like we're drowning right now, and all we think we need is another person, but then that person just jumps in and drowns with us. So that's where I think my head goes a lot. And sometimes it's strange for people to talk to a recruiter, and I'm saying, hey, you don't need somebody. But that's actually a benefit to me because I want to be a long-term partner, and I also don't want to start a search where we get to the end of it and it's like, well, there's actually not a role for this person. That's a lose, lose, lose for everybody. So yeah, focusing on the outputs of what job actually needs to be done, I think is critical.
So when I'm working with somebody and I'm working through the championship formula, a couple of the things that we have for the components is the roles on the team. So I call them the positions on the team. And then you have the roles and responsibilities. And so we create an accountability chart of these are the roles, not the people's names, but these are the roles that we have. And then these are the things that they're accountable for. I'm hearing you say that don't just put down the items that they are accountable for, but actually make sure that each one of those items are directly linked to an output, some desired output that we have.
Yeah, and I think of accountability and outputs. I think it's similar semantics or similar principles. And tell me, Tony, just in the championship formula, what do you see as people's biggest hire? Well, what gives them the most nervousness? Like, are they at that 200 door mark? Are they at that 500 door mark? Is there one role in particular that you think causes the most angst for people to pull the trigger on?
I don't know if it's the most angst, but one of the areas where I think they have the most trouble is finding a maintenance coordinator, somebody that gets maintenance. Maintenance, you deal with tenants, you deal with the owners, and then you deal with vendors. You have 3 people you have to coordinate, and so I think that's a really tricky position. And I think that people don't spend enough time picking out the right person for that. So I know that's a frontline position versus maybe one of the C-suite positions we were talking about. But that's just a hard position for people to hire for and then train for. It's not enough just to hire them and say, okay, here is your task management software. Here's your list of vendors. Check the boxes. It's a hard position to train for.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. And I think for a role like that, if you have a good one and you're listening to this podcast, go give them a hug, a bonus, a lunch, and let them off today. Because you're right. We haven't even talked about retention. I mean, I do feel like if you recruit well, you can retain well. But going back to one of the original principles, the difference between hiring and recruiting, we live in a capitalistic market, right? Going back to the sports analogy, it doesn't matter who you are and how much you're getting paid. If you don't perform, you're off the field. And I think that is the benefit. And this is not intended to sound heartless, but if they're not performing and you don't have a backup plan, you're probably not going to terminate them. I
That's
mean, I talked to a lot of people. Yeah.
a
So, yeah,
lot of clients that I work with when they first start working with me, they know they have an underperforming team and yet they feel like they have no other option. They have no choice but to just deal with it because they they don't have that list of players that they've recruited over the years.
exactly. And my advice to them is it's probably not going to get better. It's probably not. But two, like you actually have more control. You don't have to just wait for them to quit. And if they quit, if you don't have anybody on the bench, I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I'm having from this is always have someone on the bench. And once again, they might not know they're on the bench, but there is a way, even in small markets, to just keep people. People know when they're on your radar, right? You're texting them, you're checking in. You might send them a Christmas card. Like people know, and I think that's actually really, really wise because you're right. You're going to stick with that person you got, regardless of their attitude, their performance, etc. If you don't have anybody in the background, if you have anybody in the background, there's a lot more confidence and freedom to know that if that person left or if I did have to terminate them, then I got someone waiting in the wings.
There's a few things that I really focus on in property management that can destroy a company, and the handful of things that I think are screwing up your trust accounts, messing with other people's money, shouldn't happen. You gotta account for every penny. Fair housing, a fair housing claim. You don't have to be wrong in a fair housing claim to go out of business, because there are
Mm,
enough people with enough money with enough free resources that they can put you out of business if they file a fair housing claim against you. The last thing is, messing with lead-based paint. It's just one of those things where if you're doing your renovations, especially in states like Colorado where they're super, uh, you have to be certified for doing any sort of property management for somebody that you have to be lead-based paint certified. So those three things I think are really out in front of what can destroy your property management company. But there's another one that I think that people just don't think about, and it's the culture of mediocrity
mm,
and just accepting that we are good enough. And I think that will kill a property management company faster than the other three, because if we just accept that culture of mediocrity, no, we don't hit our KPIs. We don't even have KPIs. No, we don't have a growth goal. We just sort of hope that we get referrals. These things, this culture of mediocrity, not having this vision of, hey, we operate as a championship team, and would this happen or would this be tolerated on a championship team? And if the answer is no, it shouldn't be tolerated here.
mm.
Having that kind of mentality attracts those people. And a lot of people have leaned into remote team members. And if I can work for you remotely, then I can work for anybody remotely.
Hmm.
So why do I
Yep.
work for you? What do you bring to the table as the employer that makes me want to perform and to be a part of this championship team? I don't want to be a part of a mediocre, just getting by, getting beat up in every game. Like that's just
Hmm.
not appealing to me. So I know I went on a little bit of a,
No, I
getting
love
on my
this.
soapbox, but
So I wrote this here. This is actually a good takeaway. This has been fun. So I think a lot of times, and look, I spent 10 years between my recruiting times, really 8 years in PE and VC backed software companies. Had a great ride. Had a monthly quota every month for 8 years. I'm not sure if I got more gray hairs or just lost the hair altogether. It was awesome, but it's intense. And taking some of that mentality is what we're saying now. I think a lot of times, small business owners, but specifically property management for the purpose of this conversation, we think recruit to refill. Someone's left, we've had a fire on, now we got to recruit to refill it. But what if we switched that and got a little more aggressive? Maybe not aggressive, but maybe a little more like you said, of like ambitious, and said we recruit to replace. Where like this person's underperforming, we've talked, and once again, I'm I'm being brief here, right? I'm assuming that it's a great company culture. You've talked to this person multiple times, like they know they're underperforming. I'm not talking about like boiler room, come out of nowhere, December 24th. Here's a jelly box and a notice that you're done. I'm talking about very calculated performance metrics, and this person's an underperformer. It's identified. You're not going to get to where you need to be with them, and then change that mentality of like recruit to replace,
Yeah.
right? And it's like I can replace that leader because they're not performing. And going back to kind of the theme of what we're talking about and recruiting in general and having like an intentional methodology and mindset around it, like what got you here will not get you there. And that's not my quote, it's used often, but like what got you to 200 doors, and you probably talk to clients about this all the time, will not get you to 500. What got you to 500 won't get you to 1,000. And I think that mentality of like always leveling up your talent, but also you, I think just that habit and that culture is great. And I'm sure some people are thinking about this. They're saying, hey, of course you're saying we need to recruit all the time, but I won't list off the laundry list, but I got like 47 things I have to do this hour. I don't have time to like go be taking some guy to lunch who works at a landscaping company in town, right? So just to kind of take this a little different direction, and I'm sure you're very good about this. Mark, we've talked about Peter, like the online presence, the culture. But I think locally, there are some things that you can do in your market, even if, LinkedIn and Instagram or TikTok, or not TikTok, but you know what I mean, just in general, like a company that has a really good local brand and reputation, investing in that can help recruiting. And seeing that as like a recruitment arm, I think can be really powerful. So that's a whole other thing, but I don't want people thinking recruiting is just like taking people to lunch or sending LinkedIn DMs or posting on Indeed. Recruiting is a culture thing, and it starts at the top. You want all your coworkers enjoying work so much and the challenge and the excitement where they're happy to go tell their friends about it. Yes, they're getting a referral fee, so there's a process there, but it's also led by people who are trying to bring in their friends to come work. I mean, two of the people I recruited for Everness 9 and 10 years ago are still there, right? Because of the culture. The culture is keeping them. The culture attracted them, but the culture is also keeping them. So these are a lot of things that people are already doing and aware of. Yeah, I need a good culture. Yeah, I need good marketing. Yeah, I need new branding or good branding. But my point is that like all of those need to be tacked on to help with recruiting. So like Nick Saban, like everything about Bama from the time the recruit walks on the campus, there's like, it's not just him recruiting. There's like 75 people from the cafeteria lady to the strength coach to his wife. Everybody's recruiting. I think that's the kind of culture you want, is that every part of your business is, yes, geared towards doing that business, but also geared towards bringing on great people to help do the business. And I think that's, if there's one takeaway that I would encourage someone to take from this, is everything is recruiting, period.
Okay. I really like that. I like that whole mentality of, and I think that every person we add should level up the performance of the entire team. So we shouldn't be just hiring to replace, like you said. It's, we have an opportunity to bring in somebody that levels up everybody on the team
Mm-hmm.
by the skill set that they bring to the table. So let's actually switch gears a little bit and talk about, okay, I'm convinced I need somebody. I'm, I talk about being in the entrepreneur extraction business, where my job is to extract the entrepreneur from the
Yeah.
day-to-day operations of the business. So let's talk about helping somebody that's in that position. They know that they need to get out of the day-to-day. They've been working on it, maybe slowly. How do we help them accelerate that? And specifically, okay, where do they need to be and where do they need to be ready in order to engage a company like yours to help them through the process, and what would that look like?
That's a good question. I would say, as a recruiter, and I know there's other recruitment firms that focus on the space, small business in general. My biggest competitor is not like another recruitment firm or my fee or anything like that. My biggest competitor is the white knuckles, right? Is them just holding on and kicking the can and being like, 4 months, 8 months later, a year and a half later, and just gripping on to the outputs, like we talked about earlier. That's the first step, whether someone uses a recruiter or not. It's just letting go and maybe intentionally stepping away and having a vision for stepping away. Kind of like what Peter talks about, like taking a month off in June. Like, try to take 2 days off and see what breaks, right? So I think the first step is being open to letting go of your own outputs. Second step is letting go of said outputs. And the third step is going back to what we said earlier about laying that foundation of, all right, I know I need to let go of these outputs. I'm listing out the outputs I'm ready to let go, and I am actively letting go of them right now, or at least loosening the grip. I know what they are now, and I can find someone else to grip them. I think that's the first step. The first step, like most things, is right between the ears, and then it's actually going out to find them. So I think that's probably the best place to start. And then from there, it's some things we mentioned earlier about really nailing down what you need, getting buy-in from other senior leadership, getting feedback from senior leadership, making sure that any outputs that this next person will be taking won't be taking from them. I don't think you have to go meet with everybody in the company to ask for permission, right? Like, you're the owner, you can do what you want. But I do think it's important to get some buy-in from senior leadership, whatever you consider senior leadership to be. But yeah, I think actively having the posture that you are going to let this go, because the worst case scenario is that you say you're going to do it and you're willing to do it, and then you hire somebody and then you don't do it, and then you're still holding your Legos, and then they don't have anything to build with, and they're like, what am I doing here, right? So yeah, I know that's a little more proverbial than maybe you wanted, but the brass tacks just come way later, right? The first thing is being able to let go and being actually willing to do it. And it's scary. Like, even for me as a small business owner, like, I have to let go of certain things, but I have to every year, every month sometimes, look at what are my outputs and could someone else do them, possibly even better than me.
Mhm. One of the things I tell my clients a lot is that they should only do the things that they can do, or they should only
Hmm.
do the things that only they can do, and they should hire or delegate everything else. And so if they're not doing the things that only they can do, then nobody is doing those things. And so
Hmm.
they have to let go of this rung in order to reach and grab up for the next one.
What do you think are the things that only they can do typically?
I think setting the vision, setting the future, and now as you grow to a certain size, you may be able to bring in a CEO or somebody that is your director of operations that can handle some things at that high level
Hmm.
that typically only you can do. But I think setting the vision, recruiting the right players, making sure that the team is going in the right direction, leading, setting aside 2 hours a day to see where the future of the industry is going, because technology is changing so fast, legislation is changing so fast, the competition, the consumer expectation. And so if you just put your head down in the sand, you could be operating at 100% efficiency right now. And if you continue to operate that way for the next 24 months, I say you're on your way out of business, because
Mm.
so much is changing so fast that we're either being proactive or we're being reactive. And I think the good companies will have somebody in a position where they are being proactive in guiding the business where it needs to go. And I think as the owner of the business, I talk about setting up the rule book, or the rules of how we win the game of property management at their company. They're the ones that get to define what success looks like. So they're the ones that have to define the rules of what it takes to get there. And
Mm.
so for me, that is what that means, of them doing the things that only they can do.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that's challenging for me too. Um, yeah, that all makes sense. And I think, do you think people feel like selfish stepping away from the business? Do you think it's imposter syndrome? Like, what's holding the Legos? Like, what what mentally do you see the most? Where they're like, I have to do it.
Yeah, I think I love the question. I experience that a lot with clients. They have been the hero in their business for so long. They're the
Hmm.
answer man. They didn't have their policies written down, and so if there's some weird thing, an employee goes to them and asks them the question of how to do something or should we do this or that, and they get to be the hero. They get to be the answer man, answer woman, and they are the ones that they get value by beating their chest. I solved this problem. Now, some may not identify with that, but a lot of them do. They've built this from a very beginning, very scrappy, starting up 0 doors and growing it to 300 doors, and they still feel like they are the expert with a bunch of assistants, and they
Hmm.
have to switch over to that mentality of I'm the conductor of the orchestra, but I have an expert playing every instrument in every seat.
Mm.
And I think breaking through and letting go of that is really tough. And I actually have a client where we had a conversation where we had worked through all of this, and we had pulled them out of the business to the point where outside of their level 10 meetings, they really weren't involved in the day to day. Didn't mean they weren't important in the business. They were doing this big picture thinking, but they felt like they had to go to the office. So I was talking to him one day and I said, "Well, what are you doing at the office?" And he's like, "I don't know, but I feel like I have to be here for the
Mm.
people." And so we worked through that, and now, he alternates. He's got a couple of different houses, and so he'll spend a week where the office is, and then he flies and spends a week
Mm.
in the other location. And the business is actually better for it because we've figured out how to empower people to take ownership of the outcome, have
Mm.
the authority to make decisions, and have the autonomy to operate without waiting for somebody else to interact.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing.
and so I think that's the key part of that mindset of letting go, letting some things happen, but being there to train on doing the right things.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like the irony that what you think is the most selfish thing to like not be in the office and not be around and not putting out fires is actually like the selfish thing.
Right.
And the unselfish thing is to step out and provide some space for other people to level up and go meet with owners and add another 50 doors and network and close deals and like still keep that kind of like enterprise sales title and think strategically and visionary, but you taking a step back and for 2 days thinking for a year to three down the road and thinking about the career track of your property managers and do we need a director of marketing and like how can we include our global talent more in the culture of the team, like that that 2 hours is actually impacting positively 25 people years down the road than you putting out 25 dumpster fire tasks that like they could have done.
Yeah.
It's
Every
like my son,
time,
he's like 4 years old, and it's like if every time he tried to rake the leaves I was like, dude, give me the rake, just let me rake it. He's never going to learn,
right?
right? And I really need to teach him to rake the leaves. So he's a teenager. I'm not doing it anymore. He needs to learn fast.
Yeah.
But no, I mean it's just interesting. I'm, whiteboard here with you, but yeah, it's actually selfish to be so involved
Yeah.
because you're not providing opportunities for other people.
Every time you solve a problem for your team that they could have solved for themselves, you do damage to the team. Number one, you're
Yeah.
training them to do the wrong thing. And number two, you're taking away their opportunity to level up.
Hmm.
So the best thing that you can do is to provide your policy and then say, what here is our policy. Here is the rules of how we win the game here. Here is the policy, just to be clear for people that are listening. The policy is what we do and why we do it. The process is how we do it.
Hmm.
And the process can change, but typically our policies stay the same and or change less frequently. So if we can train on what our policy is and then we get out of the way and we let our team figure out, because they're closest to the front lines, how to accomplish something to adhere to or uphold our policies, that's the best way to go about getting performance out of your team. And
Mm.
so if you think about, I'm going to step away and let my team perform underneath these requirements of obtaining or upholding our policies, and I'm going to get out of the way and I'm going to do that big picture thinking. Now I'm providing growth opportunities for people on my team. And a lot of times in the small business space, they're like, well, I want to hold on to my people, but I really don't have any growth opportunity. There's nowhere else for
Hmm.
them to go. So I guess I can throw more money at them. But at some point, that's not motivating for people. And everybody would
Mm-mm.
say, yeah, I'll take another extra 10 grand a year for what I'm doing. Nobody's going to turn that down. But it doesn't
Hmm.
really mean that that's what's going to hook them to stay and to contribute and to be excited to be there.
Hmm. Yeah, love it. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
That's a great message.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
All right. So if somebody wanted to work with you, what's it says, okay, I'm ready to recruit. I don't necessarily have time to do this all myself, but I want to hire somebody that can help me with this, can help me build this team, the championship team I'm looking to build. What's that look like? How do I go about doing that?
Yeah, great question. Well, I will just back up a little bit because one thing I wanted to share just about recruiting in general, and then of course we'll directly answer your question. I think at the end of the day, recruiting is a skill. So whether someone uses a recruiter or not, it's a skill that people can grow in. Some people are natural recruiters, and they like it and they enjoy it, but it's a skill. And I would say it starts at the top, and all owners and founders and all the other things they're working on professionally. I just asked them to add recruiting to the golf bag because it is something you need. And you probably use the club more often than you should hit that club more than you think. Recruiting is a sales function, kind of things we talked about earlier, is that if you're only thinking recruiting as a reactive marketing function to post jobs, you're thinking about it all wrong. And then lastly, recruiting is a core business foundation. So in the Mount Rushmore of sales, marketing, operations, finance, like I'm trying to chisel some rock for recruiting, whether they use me or not or ever talk to me. Like I love recruiting. Even when I was like a little kid, recruiting guys to go play soccer out on the field after hours. Like I'm a recruiter by trade. All my favorite movies, even Moneyball's, are my favorite movies. Because what is it? It's all about recruiting, right? Recruiting is just infused in the fabric of our economy, but everybody overlooks it. So I love recruiting. If anybody ever wants to just talk recruiting, have a quick question about hiring, interview tips, tricks, books, podcasts, whatever, like I love it. The last thing to answer your question, yeah, the Kalmar Group, our tagline is finding great leaders for great businesses. And I like to say that really my business is that tagline flipped, finding great businesses and then finding great leaders. So what I mean by that is that I want to partner with great companies. I've been spoiled rotten with some awesome clients, and a lot of those in property management. It's about really 70 to 80% of my business in 2025, which will be exciting. But to find me, the kalmargroup.com, KALMAR group.com. If you want to know what Kalmar comes from, then you'll have to jump on a call with me. But yeah, I love this space. I try to work very transparent. And look, I've got a lot of people who I've been talking to a year who have yet to use me in a formal recruitment partnership, which is completely fine. It might be another year or two they use me if ever, but I still try to add a lot of value in like the hiring recruitment mechanisms, a lot of things that we've talked about today, because I really feel like property management is an awesome opportunity for a lot of people, but we got to just bring more people into the market, into the industry. There's a lot of exciting things happening, and it's really fun to share that story of some really great businesses in this space and finding some great leaders.
I love it. I want to have you back on, and I want to have us have a conversation about how to structure not just finding the right people, but how do we go about building out the role, the compensation
Mm,
package, all these things. Because I think that's a huge. It's just one of those areas where people say, "Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to hire. I don't know how to
yeah,
create this compensation." So let's have you back on at another time. We'll
I
dig
love
into
to.
that and we'll provide additional value. And I think I really enjoyed this conversation and getting to know you and our friendship. And we had a little bit of a chat. We actually got started a little bit late because we had such a long pre-show,
Yeah.
having a great chat about some of our common interests. So I've enjoyed having you on. Anything I want to give you the last word? Anything you want to close out with?
No, thanks for having me. I need to get in a little bit better shape and we'll catch some miles together so I can stay up to date with you. But yeah, I'd love to be back on and talk more nitty gritty of like what questions to ask, what tools to use, etc. More than happy to do so. I really appreciate you having me, Tony.
All right, Dylan. Thanks again.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.